it's a bit exclusive when people say, well, come and work in the wine world. We don't pay much, but like, it's fun and we have nice dinners. Well, I've got 3 kids and I've got to pay my rent in London. You have to pack your bag to the moon. What do you take with you about wine education and what do you leave behind? And every time what people leave behind on wine education was the French sommelier, that very standing straight guy with a jacket and the big great pin that just recites stuff. I'm not sure, making wine simple is the solution to everything. I think complexity is part of the beauty that attracts people to wine. That's not something that we talk enough, in my opinion, in the wine world, is how we work with alcohol every day. And of course, wine is amazing and I wouldn't want to stop drinking wine, but moderation is how I can keep drinking wine for the longest time without putting my health on the line.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to No Sediment Wine Podcast. I would like to start by thanking 67 Pall Mall for not only supporting wine communicators, but supporting wine community altogether, and also for providing us with these beautiful premises for filming this episode here today in London. Today, my guest is Pauline Vicard. Did I pronounce it?
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah, Pauline Vicard, Executive Director and Co-Founder of ARENI Global. Hi.
Hi, thank you for having me.
How are you?
I'm good, thank you. Not even raining today. It's just,
Can't
complain about the rain.
Exactly, perfect. So I have a very interesting topic. At least it is really exciting for me. But before we start, could you maybe introduce yourself to the audience and tell us how your wine journey started?
Oh, I have to do that under 2 minutes, I suppose. So my wine journey started at the very beginning because I come from a family of winemakers in Burgundy. So I was born in wine, almost literally. I've worked on my parents' estate until they sold it a few years back. And I've always worked in wine. So I've learned about wine at school in wine trade. And then I've worked for general bodies in France. I worked with French embassies abroad, helping winemakers to export in those countries. I had a shop and a restaurant in Lille in the north of France for 10 years where I was doing training as well. And I was part of a training team that trained all the restaurants managers on how to make a wine list and how to make money out of their wine list. And then I moved to London 10 years ago because the idea at the time, I wanted to be a master of wine. That was part of the project. And I also wanted to learn and study about the wines of the world because France is an amazing country, but you seldom find anything apart from French wine. So having acquired quite a good knowledge about French wines, I wanted to know and extend my knowledge about the wines of the world, but also how the British do trade, because British people are really, really good at commerce. And that's something that's always fascinated me. So that's also something that I wanted to learn. And now I've been the executive director and the co-founder of ARENI Global since 2017. And ARENI Global is a think tank that's dedicated to the future of fine wine. So our job is to look at how the world is changing in terms of big changes like environmental change, societal, geopolitics, economics change, and how that affects production, distribution, consumption of fine wine. So we do a lot of research, a lot of study, a lot of publication, a lot of focus groups, etc., to understand, those big changes. Again, that's a lot of changes.
Well, actually, before we start, can I say thank you? Because I do listen to ARENI Global podcast constantly on repeat sometimes before my exams. They're packed with a lot of examples. They're just amazing with the information. So that's something that
Thank you.
They're really valuable. So anyone who's studying. But today I wanted to talk to you about the wine education, but in a more different angle, I guess. And the reason why I wanted to talk with you about this is because I read your white paper on wine education and I thought, oh my God, finally someone has been talking about it, something that I've been thinking about. Finally, it is put on the paper. So could you maybe tell us what inspired you?
That's the white paper.
Yes, exactly. Could you maybe tell us what inspired you to do this?
Yeah, of course. That's a very good question. Actually, it started with a couple of observations. And the first observation was in 2024. The WSET saw a record number of people entering their wine education program, not just a diploma, but every level. And it was quite similar with some of the other organizations we asked and we worked with. So you could see that there was that people really wanted to learn about wine. There was a lot of success about those wine education program. You can also see that wine is still a very much attractive, sector to work with. When you tell people I work in wine, it's not like, oh, I'm an accountant. People like just have their eyes. Oh, wow, that's so interesting. Tell me more. So wine is still seen as something quite attractive, right? People want to learn about it. People are interested in the topic. But at the same time, we also had a study that Pauline published the year before that said that 55% of the companies had trouble recruiting people. And that cost, the majority of them a loss in revenue or the incapacity of taking new markets because they didn't have the skills and the talents internally. And also, I don't think I don't think that's news for anyone, but we know that the wine world is generally a world where it's difficult to make money and to be viable financially and profitable. So we took those two things and we thought they were a bit paradoxical, like the interest for wine, that's massive, that's important, but yet the wine trade that has difficulty recruiting people and even more difficulty sometimes to make money out of their operations. And so we thought, well, maybe education has something to do with that. Maybe we're not teaching the right thing, or maybe there's a dichotomy between what we like to learn, what we learn to teach, and what we need to know. And that was the all, premises of the study. That's the hypothesis we started with.
So how would you define the wine education? What would be your definition?
Oh, that's a very good question. We took a very broad definition on that approach of white paper. I can give it to you actually, because we did it. I mean, master wine student, you start by defining your topic. So let me see definition. The term wine education refers to education to professional members of the wine trade and includes everything from academic qualification to certification and in-house training. So we took a very broad definition, but I guess it's important to precise that we are talking about people that sell wine in a global, way, and not the people that make wine. We didn't look at, professional education for winemakers or viticulturists or that part of the wine sector.
Yeah, exactly. And when I was reading, I was actually also, I guess, more focusing on the hospitality industry because I'm maybe linked more with that.
It was not just hospitality. It was really everyone whose role is to participate to the sale of wine. So either in the on-trade or off-trade.
Yeah.
Well, I guess educators do have, a role in that. They support that function too.
So do you think wine industry sometimes mistakes knowledge for skills?
I don't think they mistake knowledge for skills. I think that just we give an over-importance to knowledge. I think it's more of a, again, after it took us 18 months to do that white paper, we did focus group, we did roundtables, we did questionnaires, we did, we interviewed 40 professionals around the world, and also recruiting companies and people that are in charge of recruiting people, because that's really the starting point that we wanted to have, is like, what are the skills, what are the talents that you're really missing, what's the hardest position to recruit for and why, and etc. And no one through the interviews told us that knowledge is not important. That's something that I want to make really clear. Knowing wine is important to work in wine. And if you have anything to do with sales directly, it's even more important, because when your role is to differentiate 3,000 SKUs, some of them having just a bit of difference of 300 meters because it's two different plots in Burgundy, knowing why and being able to explain that is extremely valuable. The problem is not that knowledge is not important, is that we only develop knowledge through education, or we overdevelop knowledge instead of developing the skills that are also important to any kind of functions that one is going to do in the wine trade after that.
Okay, so you said that through all your research, you asked what were the skills most missing, and could you maybe tell us which skills came up the most?
So the skills that
important.
Well, which one would you say?
Well,
how you read the study? I guess
I would want to say that analysis altogether, like analyzing any kind of information that comes your way, be it sales numbers or whatever, business skills and understanding. That's something I'm missing. I literally, when I'm interviewing you, but I literally have issues with some of my colleagues. Sometimes when I talk with them, they say, Agnes, it's not all about the money. Yeah. Like, but I want this business part to be profitable as well.
Yeah.
It's almost like you're being guilty, like you're made guilty because you care.
And I guess there are cultures that even, that's also where you put the cultural emphasis in, making money or not, because they are like Latin cultures are usually not about the money anyway. And that's why I came to Britain, because I wanted to understand how the British did it. But yes, so you're right. The business, anything that has to do with business and numbers is a big miss. And you don't have to, be the CEO of a company to be required to understand numbers and to be required to understand margins. Like understanding how margin works is something that is really missing. And that comes from people. We didn't have anyone who told us we are missing wine knowledge. Some people told us we are missing wine tasting skills, but in the wine world, what in the knowledge related to wine, what was really missing is a knowledge of the supply chain, for example, and how each segment adds to another, and that relates to financial skills, because you have to understand the margins that supply and how to be profitable, and how you relate also in terms of business relationship with the people before you in the supply on the value chain and the people after you. We also had a lot of lack of communication in marketing, and marketing both strategic and operational, and communication. And that's an interesting part, because that's where we've seen the most different strategy depending on the size of the company. So usually what small and medium companies do is that they recruit people who know wine, and they try to hope that they will develop the business skills, right? Mm-hmm. But they go for wine knowledge first. The big company to the reverse, they kind of recruit people that are marketing or communication specialists, and maybe impart the wine knowledge after. And that has two different consequences. The first one is, of course, the small company never really have the time. It takes a lifetime then to develop the skills that are marketing, communication, sales, unless you have a gift for it. And then big companies, I've seen so many people come and go at like the top level of some of the big companies, because they come from marketing and communication from outside of the wine world, and they can't relate or adapt to the wine world. That is still a very, very different culture, and also a very different budget when it comes to marketing and communication. Mm-hmm. And a different way of thinking. We might not be the most innovative, right? Marketing is mostly winemaking dinners, not mostly. Mm-hmm. When you want to go outside of that framework of we're going to do a winemaker dinner, we're going to do, tasting events. That's mostly what marketing people do in wine. So business skills, marketing and communication, and everything that has to do with that data analysis. That's the most recent skills, I suppose, which is linked to everything. I mean, all the companies have learned the lesson. Most companies have learned the lessons, and they are now collecting a lot of data. They just don't know what to do with it, and how to process and what to make of those data as well. That's the next step for them, I think.
Okay. Do you think there are different skills lacking in different professions in the trade? Is there, like, I think in hospitality there's something more specifically than maybe in
so for what I have in the results, not really. That was kind of across the board.
Okay.
And in the hospitality people that we interviewed also lacked, the business parts of the skill. They also have, trouble recruiting even more than the rest of the trade, and recruiting at all level. But they were not mentioning any. I don't know if you were thinking of anything in particular when it comes to hospitality.
No. I just thought that that as you mentioned, the trade itself it's really diverse, and there's different professions. And maybe when I think about wholesale companies in my market, at least, I would say that they're quite skilled when it comes to at least sales and marketing. And then when I think about hospitality, they are maybe less skilled when it comes to understanding, as you said, the margins.
I think it's like responsibilities that are quite new to them as well. Like the positions like sommelier or a wine buyer, they were not asked to do those type of responsibility before, and they're now asked to do it as well. So
should we ask, actually? Maybe they should just, be happy with the wine list creation and selling and talking about wine.
I guess it depends it all starts with your business model, right? So it really depends on your project, your vision, and what you are doing. But if you end up with one person doing the list and having to sell it, you have to have across the board kind of a qualification as well. I don't think you can have a restaurant with someone that doesn't know how to do a stock take, for example, and stock take are a nightmare, quite hard to do. Or even now working with different softwares and CRM is actually also quite important to how to feed a CRM with your client needs and stuff like that. So I guess that's quite relevant for the hospitality world now across the board.
You touched upon it a little bit, but why do you think now we lack those skills? I have my own theory in my mind, at least when it comes to hospitality industry, but like in the rest of the wine trade.
Well, I'm not sure we were not missing them before.
Okay.
I'm not sure it's something new. When you look historically, I mean, we've always focused education on knowledge. It's also, I mean, if you go back to education at large, because that's the first thing that we did. Like every time we take a topic like this one, we always take a big 360 view. And we started working with some of the deans in the US top university, so the dean of Yale, and ask her, what's the purpose of education in the world today? And the purpose of education is always the same. But there's two Latin roots, if you want to go philosophically about this, that the word education has. You have educare and you have educere. And those two words, they refer to two different things. And educare is the fact of repeating the knowledge, like acquiring the knowledge of the generation before you. And that has value. And that has value when you have a society that's founded on craft, for example, because developing craft and knowledge and skills with your hands as well, how to make something takes time. So the purpose of education is actually to teach you what has come before you. And that's still important in the wine world, again, when it's all about craft, and we know we need to learn how it's made and also how it's sold. And that's also why a lot of our education system is based on mentorship in hospitality, for example, where you shadow someone because your purpose is actually to acquire the knowledge of the generation previously. Educere, on the other hand, is actually something that's more about leadership and actually preparing the next generation for what's coming. And ideally, you would have a bit of both. But traditionally, in most systems, even as societies, we focused education on acquiring the knowledge of the generation previous and the foundation and the base. And we, even at normal school, we are just now thinking, or maybe we should, teach people how to think and how to adopt to the future that we don't know what's going to be. So to go back to your question, I don't think the fact that we focus on knowledge is new. I think it's always been the case because it's always been the case generally in education anyway. And education that's about craft and, mentorship and shadowing people and learning generational ways of doing things. I think now because the pace of change is so quick, and also because right now, making money is even more difficult than before because we are in a tough economy. So if you go to very practical things, you need to learn how to make money. Otherwise, there's no leeway. Money is expensive. You're not going to wait 10 years, to close your company if you're not profitable. You have 3 years to make to prove that you are viable. So I guess it's even more important today that we have people that are ready. And I know I'm French, so I can hear myself saying this, and this part of me that says, oh gosh, you should be a romantic about wine. It's not just about money, of course, but you also it's really important that we learn how to make money, because if we want to keep doing what we love, at the end of the day, it's all about profitability.
Of course, sustainability is also a financial.
That's the quote that I had from Johan Reinecke from Reinecke Wines in South Africa. I'm sure you know about him. He's such a champion of sustainability. And he says, well, you can abuse the earth the longest, right? Environmental sustainability is the one that you can, not care about for the longest, and you will still be able to do your business. People is the second, right? You can abuse or mistreat people a certain amount of time before they give up on you as a company. But financial sustainability is the one that actually you have no second chance, right? It's either you make it or not. And I thought that was quite interesting. Really, three different time frame of sustainability. So even if we want to be the best, if we want to be sustainable, if we want to take care of the land, of the people, even for all the best reasons that you can find, if you're romantic about wine, money is really important.
Exactly. Yeah, I completely agree with that. I was also thinking that maybe some of the leading educational bodies in the wine industry should take maybe, a step further. And I will give you an example. The ASI, so the
Association de la Sommellerie Internationale.
Exactly, yes. So the World Sommelier Association. When you look at their wine competitions, especially the finals, it is almost only about, serving skills and then your knowledge. It is very rarely about the margins, or almost I don't think I have ever seen any task about that. Or, sometimes there's something about selling. Yeah. But all in all, it's usually only these requirements. So the sommeliers who want to prove themselves, and I'm again with this example focusing on the hospitality industry, but they do not need to develop those skills to be good, to be the top, 3 in the Europe or world or.
Yeah, so I think they're changing quite a lot. And full disclaimer, I've been a tutor at the ASI boot camps and things, and I've followed some of the competition. I think they're developing that more and more. I think they're quite aware of this. Again, sommelier first skills has to be about service and knowledge about wine. This is fundamental, and that's, I believe, probably always going to be. And then you can add blocks also. You can also add blocks as people go along in their experience and in their seniority. And when I was that tutor at that bootcamp there was loads of exercise about how to build a wine list depending on the location that you are, depending on the purchasing power that you understand from your consumers, how to develop, the proportion of wine by the glass, depending on the wine by the bottle, depending on the type of establishment you are working in. I guess, and at the last World competition in Paris, they had an exercise about, taste this wine and without knowing what it is, sell it to the audience.
The one that I remember.
And, so they kind of implement that. I know that they also implement, because that's the one I've been in charge of, and that's linked to education, but it's all the education, that's a totally different topic. That's all the education which is around alcohol and the fact that you work around alcohol all day as a sommelier, and how you navigate that space and how you navigate your own intake, and how you define your own definition of moderation, what it means to you, and the type of behaviors and attitudes that you can have with alcohol and wine to have a long and prosper career and healthy. So that's also a topic that they've been starting at their bootcamp, which I find really, really interesting and necessary as well, because that's not something that we talk enough, in my opinion, in the wine world, is how we work with alcohol every day. And of course, wine is amazing, and I wouldn't want to stop drinking wine, but moderation is how I can keep drinking wine for the longest time without putting my health on the line. So
of course,
I think that's really
interesting. I'm really happy to hear about that.
So I hope they will continue to do that.
Yeah, for sure. So now if we would dream a little bit, and maybe this is a bit provocative question as well, but so if you could have a possibility to maybe reshape the education curriculum for something like the WSET, I don't know, just without criticizing them, what would you
or maybe not just take the WSET?
It's just in general. What would you change? What would you take on?
So the first thing that I would do, and I guess all those things it's not first and second and third, it's kind of all of it at the same time. The first thing that I would do is first establish the wine trade as a proper career and as a proper career path. And I'm telling you this because that was the biggest surprise for me in the study, is that when we ask people who, when they were kids or when they were growing up, who had considered wine as a career anytime through the study. And we've asked that through the in the questionnaires that we've done, but we've also asked that question in front of full rooms of wine trade professionals every time we presented that study. And I'll give you the example of the Wine Paris one, when we presented the study and we had a room full of 150 trade professionals, and it's the same numbers in the study as well. And out of 150 people, only 5 people raised their hands, me included. And all those 5 people actually had a history of a family working in wine, mostly production. One, I think, is in distribution. So what it tells you is that all the rest of the room, 145 people in the room and 145 respondents in the study, they stumbled upon wine. That was kind of a happy mistake for them, or a happy second life. Either they started their life in something like finance or law and they made money in that life, and then they hit 40 and they were like, what am I doing? I need purpose. And then they switched to wine. Or a lot of them started in hospitality, so they were attracted by the hospitality world. They were a waiter or waitress and someone made them taste wine and they were like, oh wow, how come those two wines can be that different? I want to understand more. And that's basically the 2 main lines of feeding the wine trade is those 2. I don't know if that's relevant to you. Like, how did you come into the wine world?
Exactly.
Yeah, okay. And so what it tells you is the beautiful thing about that is people come to wine because of the passion they have for the product. But because they have a passion for the product, they only care about the product because that's what attracted them in the first place. And either they are extremely talented and they were in the previous life, and we have very talented people in the wine world that comes from a second career or from that life, but maybe they have a facility to adapt. Otherwise, they're just people that are bombarded in a world that they don't know a lot about in terms of distribution, margin, sales, and etc. So it takes a lot of time for them to understand how it works. And it's still quite a special trade, the wine trade. And it's still very much based on relationship and trust. So again, it takes time. And so we don't have, just imagine if we had first, if we could present the wine trade as a career and we would go to, job fairs at top university and say, well, you're interested in law? Come and work in wine laws. We need appellation d'origine protection all around the world. Mm-hmm. You're interested in geography? Well, come and work in wine. Like, there's so many things you can do. You can present a file at the UNESCO heritage site, classifying sites and landmarks. Do you like physics or chemistry? Of course, come and work in wine. There's so many things that all the talents, you work in AI, come and work in wine, just presenting as a career path. Then for the people that stumbled upon wine, if they could have something that would accelerate their adaptation to the world, and that comes for the people that arrive in the wine world, but also what the very specific things that we have in the wine world is we don't have a lot of vertical progression in our career. We have so many small and medium companies that you don't have a lot of companies that have like 10 or 12 levels that you can climb up the ladder.
Yeah.
But what we have is we have horizontal progression. So people that move from being a sommelier to being a private client advisors, to becoming, to work for an importer. But also we have a progression horizontally in terms of countries. People move a lot geographically, and you can start your career in France, then spend a bit of time in London, go to New York, go to Asia. People move. But we don't have anything in wine education that will help us adapt. Like, I don't know, a day that would say, welcome to London. You've been working in wine for 5 years in your country. This is how the wine trade works. This is how the supply chain, the value chain works in London. That's a fine wine merchant. It doesn't exist anywhere. That's how the bond system works in the UK. And that's why it's different, because there's no VAT before, all those kind of things. And you can have a one day kind of in a nutshell, that's what you need to know about the London market and working in the London wine trade. And same thing if you were going to Japan or to Shanghai or to those kind of things. How does the wine trade works in that market? And what do you need to know in order to perform in that market? So that could be really useful. You could also imagine, I understand companies like that, the WSET, I think they've done a lot of good in the wine world of proposing things that are global and the same for everyone. But you could also imagine, and I also understand, one of the flaws that I see in the wine education today, and if I had a magic wand, I would separate that straight away, is education for professional and education for consumers. Because I think from the very beginning, the goals are very, very different. Consumers need to learn how to, love wine, enjoy wine, purchase the wine that they like. Someone who wants to work in the wine world has to learn how to sell it at some point and how to make money out of it. And of course, knowledge support that, but knowledge is to support the professional act of selling wine. But I understand that it's complex for many different reasons, that a lot of the educational providers couldn't make a living if they were too separate. And I also see the beauty of having professional and wine lovers in the same room, because they learn from each other, and it allows the wine professionals to be in the contact of wine consumers and wine lovers and how they think. But maybe at one point we've seen in the Netherlands, for example, a WSET provider have a sort of extra module at the end of the diploma, and you finish your diploma, now you want to work in the Netherlands. This is, it's like a 2-day course or an extra module that is just about professional knowledge, and learn about bulk wine, because nobody's got to teach you about bulk wine and, the economy of bulk wine. And that's such a big, important part of the trade as well. So I guess those are the type of things that we could do, is to propose those like kind of optional certification or optional, modules that are destined to professionals, either to teach them about a country, to teach them about an aspect of the trade, or those kind of things. And we also had a beautiful quote from one of the respondents that says, well, in most countries, you have to renew your driving license every 10 years, right? In the wine world, you have your certification and it's done. I think that's also something that I would change. In most occasion in the wine world, we see education as the end flag. So when you have your diploma, when you've got your Master of Wine, when you've got your MS, or you see it as the end of the road, right? Like, I've done it, I've achieved it, and now I'm safe. It's like, it should be the starting point. Like, education never stops. And if you've been a Master of Wine, even 10 years ago, the world is very much different now. Not everything, pruning methods haven't changed, or a lot of the supply chain haven't changed. But there's a lot of different aspects that have changed in how you sell wine and you make wine. So maybe have those like update knowledge kind of module that you can take every 10 years or something.
I already started to stress that.
Well, it doesn't have to be an exam. It's not like if you don't pass it, when we take away your diploma or your Master of Wine. Yeah. But maybe I think professional development is more important. And so far after that, it's all the cost of the company supporting it. So it's really dependent on the company you work with to further your education, either on the professional skills side or on your knowledge side. And some companies are doing a very good job of it. But I think probably if we had someone that has the firepower of the WSET that was starting to do that, that would be extremely interesting. But we can also think, the WSET is a big one because they're international. But when you look at all the academic providers, like all the business schools that do have something about wine, they could also propose a bit more. It will have to be financially relevant for them, but that could be an actor that could play a role as well.
And so now you have your magic wand. Yeah. Sorry, I cannot pronounce that word. So how would the wine industry benefit now that we have this?
I guess the biggest benefit would have to have that, I'd call it like the profitability acumen. But I had that quote when we also did a big exploration on La Place de Bordeaux. I don't know if you listened to the podcast.
Yes. 3 there were now.
7 podcasts.
7. I know.
Yeah, no, it was a year-long exploration because we wanted to understand how La Place works, which is a very specific system and distribution system. But if you want to work in a certain category of wine, you need to understand because it's so central. And through that interview, I had the best quote ever. And it's one of the winemakers that gave it to me, which is, wine tastes better when it tastes of margins. It didn't mean to him, it doesn't mean to me either, that you need to make money for the sake of making money, like being greedy with money. What it means is through the supply chain, people will push your wine if they're making money selling your wine. So from the very first moment as a producer, you need to understand that. You need to make sure that every member of the value chain is going to be able to make money selling your wine. And still that wine is going to be well priced for the end consumer, which is also a very important part of the value chain. And this, if we had a better awareness that wine tastes better when it tastes of money, I think, again, not just throwing passion under the car, but it would work hand in hand. Again, it's a rebalance. Knowledge is important. It will still be important. Passion is important. Trust is important. But could we just, up the level? It's just like alcohol and sugar, right? Like we're very imbalanced in those two elements at the moment. And ideally, how it would benefit is that every company will make a little bit more money, which means, if you look at the end of the circle, is that they could also have more money to recruit more talented people. Because when it comes to marketing and sales, or when it comes to the top jobs, and that's also something that we were discussing in the context of diversity and inclusion, why would people come to work in the wine world when they are going to earn 35% less than in other sectors? If you want really the industry to be diverse and to have a diversity of talents and to have some of the best people out there, we have to pay the par, right? And we might never be able to pay in as much because there's so many other benefits that we can propose if people are interested. But I guess it's a bit exclusive when people say, well, come and work in the wine world. We don't pay much, but like, it's fun and we have nice dinners. Well, I've got 3 kids and I've got to pay my rent in London. So,
Yes.
If you want to be inclusive, maybe you have to think about this as well.
Yeah, exactly. So, and if we think about skills for the future, what do you think we, as a wine industry, wine world, would need?
Well, marketing communication skills always going to be important. Okay. And to be fair, strategically, strategy remains more or less the same. It's like some of the tools that you are going to use to get to that strategy. So learning how to think strategically about marketing and communication in wine, and then mastering the new tools that AI can be and those kind of things, and algorithm and data and how to use data to support your strategy. Sales is still going to be important. I mean, that still remain the core with the wine trade. So it's always going to be the core of that, of how to move a product from point A to point, to the final point through the value chain. Understanding the consumers, I think that's really, if you look at how the wine world is shifting, at least when you start from the producers, in the 80s, the 80s, 90s were the decades of winemaking, right? We've learned enology, we had temperature control tank, we made huge progress of the quality and the stability and the consistency of wine that were produced. Then around the 2000s, we started focusing on the vineyards, and it was the decades of organic growing and how we can be better with the land and how we can be, we can have better practices that would lead to even more quality. And I think we've entered the decades of the consumer now, and how we can engage with them. How can we create events that will be for them, that will be engaging? How can we maintain trust and etc.? How can we sell them wine in a different way? I guess it's something that's quite important. That would be really, really important skills as well.
Oh, it's going to be very important given the fact that the alcohol consumption altogether is dropping.
Yeah.
So you kind of have to maintain the consumer in a different way.
Maintain the consumer in a different way. How do you engage with them? How do you make, wine fun again in some... I'm not sure, but that's a different topic. We're talking about communication now. I'm not sure, making wine simple is the solution to everything. I think complexity is part of the beauty that attracts people to wine, but a bit more fun, certainly. That's the big study we're in now. The big round of study that we're doing is called New Consumers, New Narratives. Mm-hmm. So if we meet again next year, I'll have the conclusion of that.
Perfect. Let's do that. But I also really want to focus a bit on the hospitality.
Yeah.
Because I do feel that there is huge gap, as we just touched upon it, between what maybe we as a sommeliers or people who work on the floor, be it restaurant, wine bar, or a wine shop, what we think consumer needs as an information, what we provide, and what they actually expect or want. And then I sometimes think that maybe what we learn about wine, which is actually, at least I see it as a marketing, wine people sometimes see it as an information, because for me, this is the 5th generation family, la 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 la.
Yeah.
This is like the legend that we often create about certain estates, and some are true, but some are just, you just find someone with the same surname. And this is what we feed, and maybe we do not give enough information what the actual consumer wants. So I think
there's through the wine world also one of the consequences of changing education. If I had a magic wand, is one of the consequences of giving less importance to the product in education or in everything that we do, knowing that it's important, but it's not just that, is that it kind of need to reduce your ego about it, right? Because there's also, the winemaker wants the product to be the most important thing because they spend their time making it. It's quite fair to them. But then the people that sell wine also do have a big ego about knowing about it, because they've spent a huge part of their life learning about the product. So they've got they need that space to actually show it and use it. If you rebalance between knowledge and skills, then your ego can be served by the fact that you have a capacity to sell and not just a capacity to recite facts. So that could also be a rebalance of how to use this. But yes, I guess for the sommelier, it's been, we've done a lot of workshop on wine education when we've done those prospective exercise, like, you have to pack your bag to the moon. What do you take with you about wine education? You're going to meet a population that know nothing. What do you take with you? And what do you leave behind? And every time what people left behind on wine education was the French sommelier. So what they call the French sommelier is, that very standing straight guy with a jacket and the big great pin that just recites stuff and tells you that the best pairing is that exact vintage of Bordeaux with that exact aging, with that exact meat that you are going to eat, and anything else is just like crazy, and you wouldn't be able to enter the restaurant if you wanted something else. So I guess those sommeliers still exist. I guess what we've been seeing in some of the restaurants we've worked with is that they give more and more space to sommeliers to be themselves and to express their personality, which I think is really important to connect with the consumers as well. There's been some neuroscience work that Dom Perignon have started doing with Ferran Centelles, who works for Bulli Foundation, that actually has been testing the movement in your brains, the activity in your brain, depending on the type of stories that you were telling to the consumers and how they would remember it after. Because depending on the stories that you recite and the tone that you use, it either eliminates a part of the brain that I wouldn't remember the part of the brain, so I'm not going to worry. But it's like short-term memory. You learn it and it goes away. Mm-hmm. And there's one that actually activates the hippocampus, I think, which is where the memory is created. And that's where you will remember the story. And every time to remember the story, you had to tell people something personal, like something that they could connect with. And they gave an example that stayed with me with Rioja, for example. And you've got like 2 ways of presenting it. And you could say, oh, this is a Rioja. It's a Joven, so it means that it's been aged in blah, 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 oak barrels. And, it's American oak, and you can taste it with the coconut and not the vanilla. And the consumers are, oh, thank you very much. And then you can tell, you know what? This is Spain in a bottle. This will take you to Spain, and you can smell everything, and you're there, and it's hot in your face, and like it's holiday all over again. And that's it. And that, how they activated those different zones in the brain. And I think that's really interesting. But going back to education, some of the sommeliers, I'm thinking of Soren Polonius, I hope it doesn't mind me quoting him, who's also the trainer for the Swedish national team. He was saying, like, personas can be really important. Like think about a theater actor and getting that theatrical kind of way of presenting wine and of engaging. And that's one of the skills that could be developed. Just like if you want to make the world more inclusive, we might want to start thinking about oral presentation and the difference between, on average, the capacity of women to take the power, to speak in front of a room versus men, and the confidence to go on stage and those kind of things. Those can also be skills. I'd love if the Institute of Mastery of Wine would do some stuff like this. Like, you're not only the most knowledgeable people, you're also supposed to be thought leaders. And to be thought leaders, you need to be able to express yourself with confidence, not just on paper, but also orally. Yeah. And we don't have those type of coaching. That could also be potentially interesting. Yeah.
Another stress moment for me. Another
Sorry,
paper.
I deviated a bit. But to go back on your first question about hospitality, I think the world of hospitality is changing. I don't have results outside of London, but from what we can observe here in London, the post-Brexit, post-COVID things have put a lot of pressure on the hospitality world. So it's also one of the studies that we're starting in November. It's called Fine Wine and the Restaurants, and look at the relationship between fine wine and the restaurants. Because one of the things that always makes me mad is that a restaurant, and the higher up you go, the more important the part of the F&B is. Like, drinks are really, really important for the profitability of a restaurant, to the point that to some restaurant, if you just eat and don't buy any kind of drinks, they're losing money on you. So they're making most of their margins and most of their profits on the drinks menu. But yet they don't have that much focus on how to sell those drinks and how to create a wine program. And the US is really, really strong about this. I think we have a lot of catch up to do on how to create wine programs in Europe. But I'll have, again, more
information
next time.
Okay, perfect. Now, so when we come back to the Rioja bottle, I will take the second one. I really like how you presented it. It was, that's true, actually. But
you, as a sommelier, still need to know the difference between a Robert and a Crianza and a Grand Reserva and
there will be clients who will need that information.
And they will be clients that actually, obviously, and they will want you to validate the fact that they've recognized that it's American oak and not. But I guess that's also, that's what a good sommelier does, is like having all that knowledge and picking just like 2% of what they know for that particular table and how to read a room. The how to read a room, for example, so far, I haven't met, and if you are a sommelier and you can explain and you can teach people how to read a room, because mostly people are like, oh, it's something that you learn on the floor, and it's like you develop that. I've never seen a course on how to, read a room and the type of, cues that you can pick. If there's a course that exists that will teach you this, I would love to know about that. Yeah.
But I think it's also sometimes a talent, that some people are just natural in it. They kind of pick it up easy.
Yeah. So I'll give you an anecdote also about this. Is like I was interviewing a guy who was responsible for all the drinks in a big kind of celebrity chef franchise in the UK. So they've got 3,000 people in this company. And he was extremely proud of having made the WSET level 1 and 2 available to everyone at the company, regardless of the fact that there were, people working with wine or not. It was like just a big hospitality company. And of course, that's really good. You want that. And I was asking him, well, do you also have along the way some programs that you develop internally for people that are going to climb, the steps or want to move from a department to another on how to build a wine list and how to, make money, how to manage the people on the floor? Because we haven't talked about management, but that's a big one as well. Yes. How to manage team is something that we seldom learn anyway. Even when you go to management courses, they don't really tell you how to manage people. And he was saying, so maybe not for everyone, but for people of a certain seniority or people that aspire, like the fast track people, the very talented people that you can recognize in your team. And he was saying, oh, no, selling wine is all in my head. And I was like, well, yes and no. I recognize this part of talent, but really selling something can be taught to someone. You know, you can develop your skills in anything. You might not be the most talented salesperson, but you can certainly be better.
Yes.
If you pointed towards how to do it better.
That's true.
So I guess it's the same thing for reading the room. There are some naturally, you know, people that are at ease in a room and can talk to people, but there's certainly something that you can teach.
Yeah,
as well.
I agree. Yeah,
That's true.
So we are almost at the end, and now a bit of fun part will start, or maybe off the main road. So one of the last questions I usually ask my guests is, what is the one wine myth you would like to debunk?
Oh, two maybe.
Sure.
They're quite different. So the first one, I guess I touched base on it, but I don't think that simplifying wine is the answer most of the time. And again, it really depends on the audience you're talking to. I think the complexity of wine is part of what attracts people to wine. But complexity can be fun. When I hear everyone saying, oh, we're here to demystify wine and to simplify it, most of the time I'm thinking, please don't do it like this, or please don't do it systematically. Again, there are some cases for it, but I think the complexity of wine is part of its beauty. And the second myth, and it's a more serious topic, I guess, but we've been battling. I'm sure you've heard there's a big discussion happening on the 25th of September at the UN, where the UN is re-examining what their guidelines will be for all the member states in terms of health when it comes to non-communicable disease. And the relationship, alcohol is in that category, and all the disease related to alcohol abuse are in that category. And there's been a raise of narrative that says that alcohol is dangerous from the first drop. And I think, so I don't want to debunk that myth, because in certain cases that can be true. And for certain pathology or for certain people with a history of certain disease, that can be true. There can be some people that would be better off not drinking at all. But in most cases, moderation is still a very, very valid concept. And the myth that I want to debunk, that is certainly something that I hear a lot in France, I don't know in your country, is that by encouraging moderation, we will push people out of drinking altogether. And this is a myth that I think we need to debunk. This is totally not true. And we can see that in how it's working. And actually, it serves premiumization in a way. What happens is people drink less, but they drink better. This is a narrative that in wine we should be pleased about. People drinking less but better. It's all about what wine is. If you are in that romantic vision of wine as a lifestyle, it's a social lubricant, it's nice dinner with your family all together, it's respect for nature, it's respect for the generation before you, it's respect for yourself. There's no respect for consumption without moderation. And I would like to debunk that myth of by pushing moderation and responsibility while drinking, we pushing people off wine. I don't think that's true at all.
Okay, good.
That's the
very
most
good.
serious part of the conversation.
That's a very serious topic. That's true. Yeah, I agree. And yes, maybe another day, I think because this is where you can make probably another 7 podcast episodes, on this topic alone. It's very complex. But we will move to the very fun part now, because these are the lightning rounds. So I will give you 10 questions and you have to answer this or that.
Okay.
And they will be a little bit around all the topic that we did. So education in classroom or education in vineyard?
Oh, both. Can I choose both?
We will allow you this one time. Consumer or critic?
That's hard. Because community of taste is a valid concept, and they're both parts of the community of taste. I guess because of the time that we are in as consumers.
Okay.
We have to rebalance. We gave a lot of place to the critics. We have to give more place to the consumers.
I guess so. En premiere or library release?
It's hard. As a consumer, I guess it makes more sense today to buy library release, but a lot of people are going to hate me saying that.
I like wine magazine or wine podcast?
Podcast.
Okay, easy one. I had an idea. Knowing all the Grand Crus or knowing all your customers?
Depends who you are, I guess. Customers again. Yeah.
Theory exam or practical exam?
For me, a theory.
Okay.
I love theory.
Wine diploma or the job or on the job experience?
It depends who you are and what you want to do. But yeah, both would be perfect. That's the idea. It's not less but more or differently.
MS or MW? Sorry.
For me, MW.
MW.
Very different exam. So I don't want to work in hospitality, so the choice is easy.
Sommelier recommendation or study wine list on your own?
Sommelier recommendation. I love not being in charge of choosing. Like, they know that wine is best.
Okay.
So please tell me what to drink.
Perfect.
Otherwise, it will take me too much time to choose.
And 3, your favorite wine regions at the moment?
My favorite wine regions, 3 of them.
Yes.
Mosel Riesling, very, very on trade of me. Like, I love Riesling, German Riesling. The Chalonnais part of Burgundy, I really like it. And I guess it's less exclusive than saying I love the top Burgundy, which I love, of course. The one that I'm drinking the most at that moment is the white from that part of Burgundy. I find them really interesting. Oh, and the one that I've discovered through the MW program that I would have never tasted otherwise is white Rioja.
Oh,
Really like it at the moment.
Me too. I love it.
And, just because of the way I was raised, I would never had gone there. I'd never really founded those wines before. And that's the one I discovered through the diploma that I really enjoy and drink, on my own as well, not just for practice exams.
Completely agree. So the last question from the previous guests, Dr. Stefano Gava, the wine director at Val d'Oca in Valdobbiadene Prosecco. So he talked about wine trends, and he asks, what wine trends do you see in 10 years? So he said, be it grape varieties, regions.
Oh, style of wine.
No, it really,
okay.
Consumption. He's really worried about
in
that.
10 years. Okay. For the time being, I think the trends toward more whites and bubbles, it's going to be the same. Rosé is growing up. That's hard in terms of wine trends. I think where success lies at the moment is in the middle range in terms of price and in terms of style and complexity. That's the most difficult category to be successful in because we are in a very segmented world and polarized world. So the wine train follows. So before we had a very strong middle class, we had a very strong middle segment. Now it's either cheap or very expensive. And that's going to continue for the time being because the money is no longer in the middle class. The money is in the very high net worth individuals. My vision of life would be, I hope, that the trends will go back to have a very, very strong mixed segment because that's where we make people loyal to wine. That's where we really get them interested because cheap and cheerful is fine and it has to be good. Very complex and expensive will always be there and it's good. And to some extent, it's normal that they are very exclusive because that's what excellence is. But the mid segment is where you keep people interested because that's where the diversity with a bit of complexity lies. So I hope we'll go back to that trend of having a very strong mix segment and not just everything for the pause. I don't know if that's really a trend.
No, I think
that's a hope, actually. So I have to think for a question to the next guest. Not knowing who it is, of course.
No, usually not.
I guess if they haven't covered that, and they might, but I would very much like to know what excites them in the morning, like what puts a smile in their face when they wake up and say, I'm going to work in wine today. What aspects of their job really, really motivates them, or project they're working on, whatever puts joy in their face in the morning when they wake up and they know they have to work all day. That's what I would like.
I think that's a really interesting question for that person. Yeah. Thank you very much. I have a small gift for everyone.
Amazing. Thank you so much.
The No Sediment cap.
Great.
I'm not sure you wear them or not. But
yes, of course. I've got a very big head with a lot of hair, so I need to put it to the maximum.
Whenever you're like in the vineyard.
And this is for you. Oh, I know you've read it, but I know like printed copies are always a bit different.
Can I share it?
You can find it on the website of ARENI Global.
Can I share it with my colleagues?
Yeah.
Because when I started to read it, I sent some quotes and I just loved it so much. I thought finally someone told it. Thank you.
Thank you so much.